Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming to this year's DEI Summit. We are so excited. As you heard our chairman mention last night, our theme this year is It Starts With Me, and a strategic plan starts with one person. So I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. I have James Pogue, the man in the vest, looking amazing, and I have Barbara Mojica. So I want you guys to give them a really warm welcome, and then I'll tell you who I am, because I'm the least important. Yay. You know, DEI starts first and foremost with having a plan, and that plan can be either basic or expansive. I invite you guys to ask questions today. I also want to introduce myself. For those of you I did not meet yesterday, I am Jackie Ross, the Deputy Director of the Office of Minority and Inclusion. I think a lot of you know Miguel, and now you know me. So you'll see me walking around the event over the next day and a half, and I want you to come up and introduce yourself and say hello and let me know what we can do for our next DEI Summit, and let me know how this summit serves you. Our goal is to make sure you walk away from this event with the tools that you need to be a DEI star. So I'm going to turn over to James and Barbara. You guys are going to have a great time. The man in the vest and the woman in the beautiful blazer are going to take really good care of you. So once again, a warm round of applause while I step off.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. So my name is James Pogue. Just quick introductions, and Barbara's going to introduce herself, then I'll jump into the presentation. So my name is James Pogue, and we've been doing this kind of DEI work one way or another for about 18, 19 years, coming out of universities initially, and then going into hospitals and food industry, and now into the credit union space over the last, I think, maybe 5 years or so. And so our work kind of really has gotten deeper as a result of some work we did with AACUC a couple, 2-3 years ago. And so now we're engaging with some of your credit unions, and some maybe even in this room, that help us to help the leaders become more inclusive, help the organizations to become more inclusive. And the how is what I'll get into in a little bit. But at the end of the day, we really believe that you have to build inclusive leaders and teams from the inside out, build the organizations from the inside out. And that you have to do that by executing measurables. That if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done. It's nice and fluffy and warm is great, but it may not move people that need to be moved. And that all of the people have to be engaged and involved. And if we don't have the best players on the field, then we can't hope to win. So if we want to win, then we either have to become the best players or get the best players. And that you don't have to be an expert in this business in order to move the needle in this business. So I'm hoping that what I'm going to share here in a little bit will help you to, one, understand how we execute work over at JPE, but more to the point, give you some things that you can take back that are tactical, that allow you to move things around in your organizations in ways that make sense for you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Barbara Mojica. I am the Executive Director for the National Latino Association of Credit Union Professionals. I've been working in the banking industry since I was 19, and I didn't know I was doing DEI work back then at a bank until I came into the credit union space. I've always been frustrated by the inequities that marginalized communities faced. And so coming into the credit union space, and now in my most recent role, I get to merge those two passions, right? My credit union passion and my passion for helping my community. I grew up undocumented, so for me, this is a personal battle, and I'm just here to serve you all. So thank you so much. I'll let you to take over for your presentation.
Alrighty. So again, good morning. Just a quick check. How many of us are on coffee number 1? Coffee number 2? 3? People with problems? Okay. All right. So I say that because, you know, the morning session, and you want to make sure that people are engaged. And so I just make sure you did your work to get ready. All right. Because I know some of us may have been up a little late, you know, at the festivities that I wasn't invited to. Nobody told me to adjust my flight so I could come get an adult beverage. Ms. Kennedy, we'll talk about that later. All right. So this is me, and this is who we are, JP Enterprises. But the more important stuff is everything below the picture. The time we're going to spend in just for about 25, 30 minutes here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to to take us the rest of the way, but recruiting and retaining young professional in the workplace and as members, right? It's not just enough that we get them in the workplace. If we don't capture members now for the long term, then we can be in a tough spot a little bit later on. So let me ask you to grab some kind of piece of paper in front of you for, as a former card-carrying keynote speaker, I guess I still do it, but you have to have an icebreaker, otherwise, they kick you out of the union. So what I want you to do is select the generation you're the most challenged by in your own head. In your own head, find that generation. Okay, great, you got it. Now, I want you to list words that describe that generation. On your piece of paper, feel free to guard your piece of paper from other people. We have 15 seconds, give or take, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 5, 4, 3, penmanship, no points for penmanship. 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. All right, so if you're okay with your list, just take a look at it, make sure that it properly describes in ways that make sense the generation you're the most challenged by, right? And then what I'd like you to do next is find a partner at your table and read your notes to the other person out loud. Off you go.
I wrote
30 seconds, give or take, 30 seconds.
on some. But
20 seconds and counting. Fifteen seconds.
Kennedy,
10, 9, 8.
could you tell them to turn off my speaker?
7, 6, 5.
Ready to, yeah, because
4, 3, 2, and 1. If you can hear my voice, clap 2 times. Thank you all. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 5 times. Now, just for fun and because it makes me feel good, if you can hear my voice, clap 7 times, but it had a snap at the end. Go. I expected us to be together. I expected us to be together. Okay. So we'll just do, I'll plan one later. I didn't have another one of those for later, but we'll do one later just to make sure we're all in the same space. So can somebody give me just a little bit of feedback on how that felt? A little awkward because you don't usually say it out loud. Anybody want to add to that or go another direction? I felt good. I need to get this stuff off my chest.
You might be actually saying it about the generation sitting at your table. Yeah.
Yes. A little. What word would you put in that? What is that? What is? What? Strange. Strange.
It felt like we were labeling the group.
It felt like, or we were.
We were.
I see. I just want to say, do we want to take accountability? We may not want to. And it didn't feel good. Anybody want to add to that? It felt judgmental. A little judgy. By the way, I'm extremely judgy. I know it's my stuff, but I'm extreme. I see somebody walking around outside in an outfit that I'm like, that's interesting. And I realize, James, that's you. That's all your stuff. All me. So the reason I introduce us to this is, backwards, here. Because in order to identify the tools that we want to use to engage and reach young professionals, if that happens to be the organization or the group that we want to focus on, then we have to learn to increase engagement across all the generations, right? And there are times when we have these opinions about very large groups of people. and they come out in words that we use to describe them. And oddly, from a multi-generational perspective, it is generations where we're allowed to say things about huge groups of people that we would never say about things or groups that are outside of the age brackets, the generational gaps. So can somebody give me some language they use to describe the generation that they're most challenged with? Anybody want to out themselves? Yes, please. Entitled? Stubborn. So let's just take those two. Let's put age over here, generations over here for a second, and let's come way over here to gender. And let's say that we are going to describe women, and we're going to say they're stubborn and they're entitled, right? Well, let's take that, let's move over here, and let's go over here to a religious group. We're going to say all those Catholics, they're stubborn. Those Baptists, they're some entitled folks. We just would never do that. At least we think, I don't know, maybe we would do it. But we wouldn't do it with as much veracity. And sometimes, to your point, they're sitting right next to us. And we say, oh no, not you, you're one of the good ones. As if that isn't language that we have used before with different groups that is a little scratchy, right? How did we get to a place where talking about different groups and different generations was so easy for us to casually insult them, regardless of age? Yes, please.
That would almost be a sense of entitlement too.
What do you mean?
Feeling as if you just have the right to say whatever you want about whoever you want.
Exactly.
With no fear of consequence.
Exactly.
And it's problematic.
Yes.
At least.
Yes. And we do it across groups. It's not just the older generations talking about the younger generations or the younger generations talking about those. It's in between. You know, I'm a Gen Xer, and we talk about people up, down, center. Not to mention, we are extremely cynical just in general. Or at least I am. That may be just my stuff. Again, I'm in therapy. I'm working through it. So let me jump forward. So in the work that we do, it's really important that we have a foundation. Sometimes we come to conferences and workshops and we leave with some good information, some good tactics, but without perhaps an understanding of what the foundation is. So it's really important to me as a nerd / researcher to make sure that I start with the foundation. So in order to get to where we want to be on the far right-hand side of this model, which is changed results, improved outcomes, and a shifted culture, we must start on the left-hand side with meaningful interactions between people, places, and systems. We must. This might be a good example of a meaningful interaction between people. A meaningful interaction of systems might be when you do a pay equity study, right? And when we do these things well and right, it challenges and reinforces our behaviors and beliefs. I know that what I believe is exactly right. It has been borne out by the data and the meaningful interactions that we had. Or, you know what? It's possible that I'm wrong. The data doesn't agree with me. I thought we were paying everybody the same, but it appears that we are not. And then that can encourage us to have different behaviors and make different decisions. And then over time, sometimes too long for most of us, we get to these different results. Everybody with me on the model? Okay, so I'm a middle child. I'm gonna need you to talk to me. Everybody okay with the model? Yes. Thank you. Any other middle children in the house? Is it just me? So you all understand what I'm dealing with, right? Okay, all right. Now, we have something we call the DIBS Big Nine. And this is that, well, I think that diversity is everything about you and I that makes us similar or different. Everything. Height, hair color, favorite car, all of that works, right? I also know that certain aspects of diversity are more impactful than others. Every day of the week, my age is more impactful to how I see the world and how the world sees me than my favorite color, along with the rest of the other 8. The lesson from this slide is that while diversity is everything about you and I that makes us similar or different, some components are more impactful than others. Everybody good? We just had a conversation about this like 2 minutes ago. Okay, all right. How many of you have ever in life been in an unconscious bias workshop of some kind or another, ever in life? How many have been in 3 or 4? How many have taught 3 or 4 and it really don't need this slide? Okay, great. So the lesson from this slide is you can't possibly know what your unconscious biases are. If you did, they would be conscious. Everybody good? Therapy, I'm just up my appointment. All right, so the why. So we talked about the foundation. Let's talk a little about the why. The business case for multi-generational work. Multi-generational teams are more productive, they're more creative, and they're more innovative, and that leads to more profitability, period, at the end of the statement, done. Right? You can transition that to the other parts of inclusion if you want to, good for you. But this is the business case. Way too often as I travel around the country, travel around the world, people have a way of articulating the business case without knowing the business case. We must know the business case. We can't half know the business case. You must know the business case. You must know why you exist and why your work is important and how it ties to profitability. All right? Diverse teams are less comfortable. And their less comfortable teams are more productive. It's supposed to be a little annoying to be with people that are different than you. Most of the people on my team annoy me regularly. And I feel like it's a kindness for me to tell them that you have annoyed me and I need to take 5 minutes. Because I remind, that's your job. Your job is to remind me I don't know everything. Because I think my ideas are good and right all the time, and you have to poke me and say, no, I'm afraid not. You missed something. And that's annoying. It is not comfortable. It's our job to be annoying. It's our job to encourage others to be annoying to us. Teams that are alike are easier, and easy is bad for performance. You want to get faster, you want to lift something heavier, you have to do something uncomfortable. The same thing in the DEI space. The same thing with our generational colleagues. We must do things that are uncomfortable. So we have to highlight this thing we call diversity instead of hiding it. So let's dig into the business case a bit more. There's 2 pieces that I want to make sure that we understand when we're thinking about multi-generational teams, why they are productive, why they are profitable, right? And what keeps them from that. So the speed bumps that keep us from being as productive and profitable as we otherwise could be. One is around the risk mitigation, the other is opportunity cost. So there's some research that was done by a group called Principia. They're a worldwide organization we've partnered with for maybe 2 or 3 years now. They work with lots of companies across the globe. And one of the pieces that they found that when they looked at where is the risk that is involved in the DEI work, that folks that think their organization values the diversity of its people, right? They're 5 times more likely to not think about leaving. Those of us that have had a foot in the HR of one kind or another, we know how expensive it is to replace people. It's twice their salary oftentimes. It's extremely expensive. So we are able to save money if we keep good people. Now, employees that believe their leaders lead by example to create an inclusive culture, they didn't say they get it all right. They just lead by example. They stumble forward, do the awkward things, the strange things, and say, look, I'm trying here. What happens then? 6 times more likely to talk about this place as a great place to work. As a great place to work. You don't have to get it right. But you must try. And we have to encourage our leaders to try. To go get educated, to go get coached, and to try. Because people will think or know this is a better place to work. Now, last, if I can be myself at work, I'm 5 times more likely to put forth that extra effort. The run through the fire effort. You know, when I'm coaching executives, especially in the C-suite, I say, don't you want your team to run through fire for you? Oh, yeah. This is one of the hows. This is one of the whys. All right? Everybody good? Yes. All right. Now, when it comes to misconduct, there was 10 components that were the top. Note the top 7. There's no one, I believe, that would disagree that these aren't risky areas. But over and over and over and over, the top 3 are harassment, bullying, and discrimination. And that's easily connected to the kinds of conversations that we do have or don't have, thoughts we do have and don't have with our multi-generational colleagues. When we call them stubborn or we behave as if they are. When we call them entitled or behave as if they are. When we need tech support and say, go get one of those Gen Z millennial people, they'll fix it. When we say that that person who happens to be a boomer, oh my goodness, they can't even do an Excel spreadsheet. When we behave this way, when we act this way, when we softly create practices that are this way. Our policies say don't behave this way, but our practices are something different. And now we're misaligned. And now we've got ethical issues. Now we've got integrity issues. All right? Not because we want to have integrity issues, but maybe because our unconscious bias looks at somebody who's shaped like that in that age bracket and says, you must be one of those people. Oh, wait, you do know how to manage a spreadsheet. Sorry, I didn't know. Oh, you are pretty tech savvy. Look at you in your gray hair, all tech savvy. So now how do we do this? There's two ways that we misbehave or need to improve our behavior and leadership when it comes to multi-generational leadership, multi-generational teams. One is in microaggressions, much of which we may have heard before in the past, and the other bystander behavior, which you may have heard in the past as well. But I'm asking us now to think about it with the foundation I just laid out in mind. The reality is most of us, James, is guilty of behaving in a way that creates distance between me and my multi-generational team members. Part of my work is empowering them to check me and my behavior in a way that is as appropriate as possible in the moment. I must. You must. We must. There are things that keep us from connecting deeply as teams, and these are two of them. So what does microaggressions look like across generations? One, they can be verbal or not, conscious or not, but they're denigrating, they're devalued, and they're directed at the person or group because of who they are. Right? When somebody says all you Gen Xers are cynical, all of us? Really? Like all? There's no one with a great attitude that's a Gen Xer? I'm sure there's one in here somewhere. Maybe not, maybe not. They didn't want to out themselves. Me, I'm the happy one. But these microaggressions, they scratch at us. They scratch. And then sometimes we wonder why some of our younger colleagues don't want to hang around for more than a year or two. We think it's because they want to bounce from job to job to job. Maybe it's because we spend day after day, hour after hour, just scratching at them, scratching at them, scratching at them, scratching at them, scratching at them. And who would want to work with that? Who would want to deal with that? So I'm supposed to just show up to work and let you softly slap me in the face over and over and over and over and over again and be happy about it. And then you come up with a whole language around, a whole story around why me and my people are leaving your organizations, why we want to be the leaders tomorrow. Maybe it's because we don't scratch each other like that. We were taught that that's bad behavior. In fact, it was people in y'all age bracket that told us that was bullying. And then I show up to your board meeting and scratch, 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 light slap, ha ha. Not you, you're one of the good ones. Ha ha, coffee, tea, happy hour.
Well, then we call them soft.
And then we call them soft. Snowflakes, if you will. Yeah. So what are some? What are some microaggressions you've watched? If you're comfortable. What are some of the microaggressions you executed? Which ones happened to you? Which ones are ones that you've seen? Did I see you raise your hand?
Yeah. Oscar, you're really well spoken.
Ah. Articulate even, yes, yes, yes. Others? Ones that you've done, one that you've seen, one that you've experienced, ones you've never seen, but you hear it happens out in the streets. Where are you from? Yes, please.
While walking to my office on the first day of work, are you lost?
Ah, yes. Yes. I saw a hand. Did I see another? Yes.
More so, like what's happened. Your passion is a little aggressive.
Sort of characterization of a behavior in a certain way. Now I'm going to ask you, direct that to an age bracket. Direct one of whatever the thing that may have occurred or that you might be thinking about. Can you give me a microaggression that you watched or executed that is connected to an age group? Oh, I'm sorry, somebody said? Yes. Yes. With a ... at the end. Okay, boomer. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Just came out of nowhere, didn't it? Sometimes we can be so innovative in the ways that we decide to insult people. I mean, whoever came up with that, you kind of want to give them like, you know what, that's good. It's not nice, it's not kind, it's not respectful, it's not honorable, but it's creative. Ooh, nice. One more, anybody? Yes.
I wasn't expecting insert fresh out of recent college grads seeing to perform so well.
Good. Again, understanding that if that's what happens in the microaggression, how then can we execute? How did we behave in that when it happened around us? Sometimes when it happens to us, it can be a little tough. It's surprising. Sometimes when we do it, we don't catch it until a little bit later on, right? So then what can we do? You see, because if we do nothing, then the delay or the absence, when it occurs, that is the bystander behavior. Some really smart person came up with this idea of calling the reverse of this upstander behavior. But that takes courage. It takes humility. Hey, you know what? I asked where your boss was or your leader was when you walked in. I realized afterwards that was probably insulting. I apologize for that. That's on me. And I'm working on how to do better. And sometimes, you did something in public, maybe you need to apologize in public. So what does that look like across generations? Let me go backwards. What does bystander behavior look like? Have you been the person in the room when the it happened, you saw it float across, and you didn't do a thing? You didn't do anything. You didn't come back around and say, hey, James, that's not how we talk to people in our organization. Hey, we're trying to work on this. I know you may be in the same place as me, and you may have thought that or executed that, but we need to do better. Anybody? Want to out themselves as a bystander, having executed some bystander behavior? Anybody want to talk about it? Yes. That's right. That's right. Because power matters, right? Power matters. And we have to decide, what should I do? Is this going to scratch my employment? I'm up for a promotion. I'm about to get vested, et cetera. I just got here yesterday, but I think this is not right, right? We have to decide. And far be it for me to tell anybody how to behave, but for me, it's, I got a grandmother that's watching me somewhere, and I got some kids, and I want them to be proud of me, and I also got to feed them, I suppose, at least once or twice a day. So you gotta balance these things out. You had your hand up, sir. Did you want to add something?
Just something that I observed for a while. One of our leaders would address all the cisgendered men by Mr. And anyone who wasn't assigned down birth would just address them by their first name.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a soft one. Barbara, did you have your hand up earlier? Did you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I think as a young person coming into this field, I've seen a lot of microaggressions, especially with Black women. That's who I've worked with along the way. And I think my age keeps me from speaking up. Because I am in the, building my career, and I don't want people to see me a certain way. But then again, I always feel guilty for not standing up.
A book I might recommend to you, I don't know, maybe some of you has already heard of Brene Brown. Yeah. So when she talks, what she calls herself a shame researcher, right? And she talks about this idea that that there's guilt and there's shame, right? That one is I did something bad and one is I am bad. And it's okay to do bad things, right? As I try to tell the team, like I'm probably gonna make a mistake once a day, right? I hope not. Like I said, I think my ideas are always right all the time. It came out of my mouth, therefore it must be right. But I try to be humble enough to know that I'm probably wrong about that. And I'm hoping that someone will tell me, even though it's going to annoy me. So how do then we increase engagement? I'm gonna wrap up here with these 3 pieces of advice, turn it over to Barbara, we'll have some questions towards the end. Some tools for us to do that. Interrupt, disrupt, reconstruct. And digging into those, so if we're interrupting something, it is in the immediate. It happened, excuse me, James, just before you keep going, let me just give you some additional language to add to what you're sharing there. Hey, James, let me catch you at the break. Have you noticed that you're always saying Mr. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so when you're talking to other people, you address them differently? Do you notice that you call the people your age and older sir or ma'am, but all the other people you call by their first name if they happen to be younger? Do you notice that? No, I didn't notice that. Immediate interruption, right? It's to help reinforce the values of the organization that we're a part of. This is who we are. This is how we behave. We try to be caring and loving for one another, but also to remind people that it helps us to be productive. Your behavior, your leadership in this inclusion space when it comes to generations helps us to be more productive and profitable. And this is how we want you to navigate that space. To disrupt. This is a little bit more broad. We want to disrupt the processes that we have, the policies that we have. Bi-weekly or monthly, maybe you've heard of these, we call them like inclusion moments sometimes, the beginning of a meeting, somebody shares something that is in the inclusion space. You can have this and you can focus it on your generational groups, your multi-generational leadership, right? You can exchange stories or solutions that have happened with you. And for some of us that happen to be senior leaders, it is extremely helpful when you out yourself as flawed. And that telling your story is part of your path to bring people along. Let's not assume that people aren't watching you, because of course they are. And you happen to be the leader. You raised your hand and said, follow me, right? Last is reconstruct. These are the long-term components, where you're collecting data. As I talked about in the beginning, that those meaningful interactions, you go out and you collect data. Why exactly are our folks leaving or staying? Are we really 5 times more likely to talk about this place as a wonderful place to work because our leaders are behaving in a way that's inclusive? And then we report that information back to our teams. And it must be, this last one here is so important, it must be leader-led. I said this at the beginning, and I'll reinforce it as I transition to Barbara, that you don't have to be an expert in the inclusion space to be a great leader in the inclusion space. The vast majority of us aren't. We're on our way. Like, I've been doing it for a while, and I learn a bunch of new things almost every day. And most of it is around how I made a mistake. But you must lead. We must have that courage. And hopefully in events like this, we plug into people that can help to accelerate our courage. To say those things at the right moment so that we're not a bystander, that we're an upstander. To know that we're going to engage in any number of microaggressions, but we want to create a support team around us that will help us to see them, because our unconscious bias precludes us from doing that, and then helps us to address them. Last story that I'm out. So unconscious bias. There's any number of times when I or you are walking through the world behaving in a way that we think is okay. And it's not. And we have to hear it when somebody taps us on the shoulder. And hearing it requires one big word that I think that those of us that are professionals in the DEI space need to think about, and that is humility. Are we at a time, there was a time in the sort of diversity 1.0 space when we had to be noticed. You need to be aware that we are here. You need to be clear that we're here. I am here. Me, my people, us, our people. We're here. We're talented. We're capable. Hire us, promote us, retain us. We're here. Okay, great. Yes. I'm wondering if in the 2.0 space, in the 2.0 inclusion space, if we might want to focus on humility. Because some of us have flaws. And some of us walk in the door with flaws. And if we're not humble enough to own that, somebody's going to point those flaws out when we walk in the door, and it's going to derail your argument. But if you can out your own flaws first and be humble in that, I think it gives us an opportunity to move forward in a more significant way. So thank you. And that's me.
Is this to move the slides? Okay. Hi, everyone, again. Let me see. Are you moved? Let me get to the presentation. It's not moving. Is it good now? Okay. It's not working. I'll talk while we wait on that. I love that John went first because he touched on the bigger picture, and I'm going to focus more on Generation Z or Gen Zers because that's who's coming into the workplace along with millennials, even though some of us are aging out of the young professional group, including myself. So, but I want to talk about them because I found some stats, and in this sort of work, I've learned that when you are trying to convince people of something, you just got to come at them with stats. They can't refuse that information. So, my presentation is very short, but because I like to have a conversation, I think it is the middle child syndrome, James, because I love when people talk to me too. So I'm just going to show you guys some stats and talk about that. And then if you guys have any questions in between the presentation, please just raise your hand. So here we go. It's not working. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so understanding young professionals, we get this question a lot, especially because of my age and the position that I have in the credit union industry. So really young professionals are typically defined as those that are 35 and under. This includes the millennials and Gen Z generations, and then the zillennials. Who identifies as a zillennial? I do, because I don't quite fit in with the millennials, but neither the Gen Zers. So the zillennials is that middle group that is aging out of the 35 and over. And then the Gen Zers value culture over salary, according to a study done by the Pew Research Center. So I found this stat really interesting because that means that DEI work is not only here for a season, it's here to stay. And if you don't incorporate DEI work into your credit union or your organization, you are going to get left behind, according to the stats that you're about to see. So the value of DEI for young professionals. Gen Zers are more likely to know someone using gender-neutral pronouns and more likely to form, should offer gender options other than men or women. So as you see in these stats, the increase of people valuing pronouns is increasing very much with the Gen Zers. So I encourage credit unions and organizations to start, adding this to your DEI work. And I also want to talk about CU Pride. CU Pride is an organization within the credit union movement that helps assist you with this sort of work is concerning the LGBTQ community. So often, sometimes when I talk to credit union leaders, they're like, well, I don't have the money to afford a DEI manager or a DEI executive person or whatever the case is. And I always refer them to organizations such as CU Pride, NELCAP, and AACUC, because, if you can't have the resources in-house, then you need to look outside your credit union to come up with those resources so that you can retain these young professionals. Because I promise you that if you're incorporating these sort of things into your credit union or your organization, young professionals, we do see that, and we are more likely to commit to your company or your credit union long term. Another stats that I found interesting is that 83% of Gen Zers, job seekers say they prioritize the company's stance on diversity, equity, inclusion. 1 in 3 Gen Zers say they would reject a job offer if the company didn't have green credentials. And then 92% of surveyed Gen Zers want some alignment in their values, purpose for the company they work for. This 92%. 92% of the incoming generation values want their values to be aligned with the company that they're working for. I am in that position. I didn't really find my passion until I came into the credit union movement as a young professional, because everywhere I worked for, I felt like it was always just profit, 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 and no value in the people. And so credit unions are in this unique space of, being able to provide this sort of purpose and values for the Gen Zers and for millennials. And that will attract more and more people to come work for your credit union, creating a more diverse community, and obviously making credit unions stronger. So as you all know, we are a dying industry, unfortunately. And so if you haven't started on your DEI efforts, then I hope that you can take this back and start today, because 92% want your company to be aligned with their values. Retention strategies that I, sort of looked up as mentoring and professional development programs. Again, if you don't offer this in-house, NowCup, CU Pride, and AACUC are great resources. Personally, at NowCup, we have a mentorship program that lasts 6 months with professionals all over the country. And it's been very successful because oftentimes people in the branches, people working as tellers, as account managers, loan officers, back office, don't get the opportunity to network with executives, right? So then the mentorship program at NowCup specifically aims to put these sort of folks working in the front lines to have a mentor in the executive role so that they can continue their growth and also help foster the credit union passion and the movement inside those folks. I was working as a branch officer at my credit union before coming to NowCup, and they had an amazing program called by the league called the Prodigy program, where people from 35 and under get to participate and compete and bring up an idea to life. So you present this idea to senior management and you compete against other credit unions, which is really fun. If you guys, I really, really hope that you all can take this back and implement it. So you compete, and then they elect one person to represent the Carolinas, right? And I participated in that and won that competition. And then I got to go to be a GAC crasher. So this is I'm just sharing this example because it's a great way to engage those younger folks and to really see the movement for something else other than just your job. After I did GAC as a crasher, it literally changed my life and the way I saw the credit union movement and just credit unions in general. So I really encourage you guys to seek out those sort of opportunities. I know that AACC also has wonderful mentorship programs. And I mean, anywhere you look, I bet your league also has those sort of programmings. And for the young professionals here, if you don't have a way to get involved, reach out to any of the organizations that I just named, because I'm pretty sure you can find something that will fit you and will help you get mentorship. Competitive compensation packages is very important. As you know, the economy is not doing so great for us millennials and Gen Zers. The ability for us to buy a home or retain wealth has become a lot harder. So it's important to compensate people fairly, especially because I think we are the generation that values that. And I mean, I think everyone, probably not just millennials, values to be paid fairly. Embracing technology and innovation is really important for us. We grew up with technology, and those Gen Zers literally had an iPad at 2 or 3 years old, I think. So embracing that sort of stuff in your credit union is very important. And flexibility. Flexibility. literally, if you are not offering hybrid options at your credit union, you are not going to survive with employees, especially those jobs that can be worked from home. You know, I think that if someone is doing a great job and is able to perform a job, it doesn't matter where they perform their job. So flexibility is also very important for retaining young professionals. Another thing I want to talk about is the employee wellness programs, ERGs. I know several credit unions that have amazing ERG programs, and again, referencing back to AACC, CU Pride, and NAUCA, we actually can help you guys start your ERGs if you don't know where to start. So please reach out. And then employee engagement is really important. Again, I talked about how the Carolina Leagues does the Prodigy competition, and it keeps people engaged all year long. I mean, it's a 6 to 8 month program. And if you think of how many young professionals are competing all over those credit unions, it's a massive, massive change. So I think there was one slide missing on this, but there was another slide that with the Pew Research, and I can share that with you all later on. Let's see. It was really just a stat about how, you know, new generations are coming in. Most of them, the largest population is Hispanic. So Hispanic population is growing pretty fast in this country. And I feel like we are often overlooked for positions, especially executive positions. So I wanted to highlight that because, you know, that is the work that I do, is to empower Latino communities. And I wanted to make sure that people were aware of that, because oftentimes credit unions are not aware that Hispanic people in this country are growing at a significant rate. I read a study that during COVID times, the population that most persevered was the Hispanic population. They retained their wealth and they actually kept growing their wealth. So it is very important for you guys to understand that and to make sure that you're putting in place programs that understand and support your Latino professionals, because that is the generation is going to be serving the upcoming generation that, you know, since we're growing so fast. So that is it. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. And I know that James is coming up here. Also, if you guys have questions for James.
Questions?
No questions.
One, then two.
How do you balance the differences between the younger generation, the Gen Zs, and those who are in their late 50s? Like how, especially with their needs and the cultural differences? Any recommendations, tips? Especially since they are such different motivators, have such different motivations?
Sure. I would start off by saying that balance isn't 50-50, right? 90-10 counts as balance. 95-5 counts as balance. You are where you are. You have to start where you are. And if you're here, 95-5, and you would really like to be in a different place, then you have to assess that, and you have to do the work to get there, right? And so if something's out of balance, you need to say, like, you need to name that. What are we talking about when we say out of balance? Is it our numbers are out of balance? We have way too many members that are 55 plus than we do that are 35 and under, and that's not sustainable in the long term. Okay, now we put together a plan to move that, right? So you have to understand you are where you are and that you are in some kind of balance right now. It just may not be sustainable. And you get to be exactly where you are. The question is, where do you want to be? And are you willing to make the effort and do the work that's required to go from, if it's 95-5 to 65-35 in 4 years? That's where we'd like to be. So you have to name it, you have to assess it, then you have to do the work. There's no just add water solution, right? It's only hard work, right? It's the only thing that's around the corner is a bunch of hard work. So you might as well just, get in the game and get to work. It's only hard work.
Can I offer something that has worked well that I've seen at the credit union that I work for was focus groups. Focus groups allow people to be vulnerable with a trained professional outside of your organization, by the way, that leads those efforts. And in focus groups, you get to learn people's differences and how to better approach them. We participated in focus groups I think 7 times, throughout 3 years where I used to work at the credit union. And that really changed my perspective on so many things that I wasn't even aware of. So I think focus groups should be incorporated.
Number 2, number 3.
I heard you speaking of.
Could you just wait on that?
Oh, thank you so much.
Sorry.
I heard you speaking of CU Prodigy. I've never heard that before. Can you just kind of give me a little bit of insight? And is that the name of the organization, CU
Yes.
Prodigy?
Yeah, so CU Pride is it's a nonprofit organization in the credit union system that actively supports credit union leaders and their credit unions and efforts for the LGBTQ community. So, if you have no idea where to start, CU Pride really guides people and executive leaders to really change their minds around how to better approach that community and how to better serve the community. And not only inside your credit unions, but how to better serve your members. Because 1/3 of Gen Zers are identifying with the LGBTQ community. So even, profit-wise, I guess, your members are going to be part of the community. So CU Pride is a great organization to help you lead those efforts.
Barbara, I think she was mentioning CU Protege, the Protege competition.
Oh, the Protege competition. Yeah, so CU Pride is the organization for the LGBTQ. The CU Protege, hey Emma, she's in the Carolinas as well. It is Protege competition. That one is hosted by the Carolina Leagues. I think we might be the only league doing that because every time I talk about it, then nobody really knows what's happening there. But they basically get all the credit unions from North Carolina and South Carolina, and young professionals can participate in this competition, right? So you bring an idea to life or something that you think the credit union can improve on. Mine was on how to better serve undocumented people in the Carolinas, right? So you compete against all these other young professionals in your credit union, then you take it within, and then you compete with credit unions. And I was in North Carolina, so I competed with credit unions in North Carolina. And then they pick a winner from the North Carolinas. Then that North Carolina Protege and the South Carolina Protege compete against each other at a panel with all the executives from, all these different credit unions. So you get the opportunity to present at an executive level as a young professional. And I was a branch officer, so I would have never gotten that sort of exposure had it not been for this competition. And I can actually connect you with the league person who I bet they would be so happy to sort of give you the guidelines for that program.
One in back here, yes.
James, you talked about interrupt, disrupt, and reconstruct. On that reconstruct, when you're talking about collecting data and looking at that long term, what would be your suggestion as where to start with that data? And how can we measure it, and how do we know where we exist today and where we need to go?
Sure. So without doing too much of a sort of commercial, you need to find a partner that has expertise in being able to measure inclusivity and belonging separate from diversity. Right? Diversity is pretty easy to measure for those things we can legally ask. Inclusivity and belonging are harder, and being able to translate that information into data that makes sense. And then once that data is gathered, then analyze that data and transform it into recommendations. And those recommendations should go from the board or C-suite all through the organization, with a focus, however, on those people that lead people, right? Too often we have said the solution is we're going to, there's the ERG-oriented solution, where we gathered a bunch of people who are very passionate but may not be very powerful in terms of their positions. And we said, okay, they got this massive systemic problem. Hey, ERGs, think about that, work on that, and yay for you, right? But we didn't give them structure and KPIs and all these other kinds of pieces. So do an assessment, Find a partner that focuses on inclusivity and belonging separate from diversity. Know that the recommendations must come from that data, right? And then you also need somebody whose tone and tenor fit with your organization, right? Like, I am hyper competitive and I do not like to lose, right? And so I'm not a good fit for everybody. Because I'm going to tell you, I think that you have an integrity problem. And then people are like, well, you're not supposed to be here telling us these things or that way. Like, my attitude may not be the right attitude. So find somebody that's a good fit who's going to poke you in the eye with a stick in love and help to usher you along the path that you want to walk. Microphone's coming, sir.
Hi. I'm a very different generation from other folks here, but in the organization that I used to run, which is relatively small, we used, for example, the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Have you found that sort of tool useful in your work?
Yes, I think so. I think understanding how people want to be coached, how people want to be approached is important to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because then we fit into those stereotypes, right? Like, Latinas are so aggressive, and I know Black women have also heard that. But I might not be aggressive, and I don't want you to be aggressive. And so being able to take those tests and then putting them out there, like, I know that some companies or credit unions will put that in people's titles when they're chatting or whatever. You can, when you look up that directory, they'll say their whatever personality test they have. And it's very helpful to learn how to approach people that way. And then that way you don't have to second guess or question how that person wants to be coached or wants to be talked to. And I think especially in that those roles where you are the leader and you have people under you, you want to make sure that you're not approaching every person the same way, because not everybody wants to be coached the same way. So I agree with them. I still use them, and actually for our mentorship program, we make everyone take that so that it's a successful mentorship program.
So I would add that I think that Myers-Briggs is a great tool, along with DISC assessment and some others that are out there. I think they're great. And I believe that if you are looking to make moves in the inclusion space, it's better to have one that's focused on inclusion, all right? And again, I suppose this does give me an opportunity to do a commercial for ourselves. Our assessment is based upon the same sort of psychosocial measurements, but it's focused strictly on inclusion and belonging. And our 5 areas that a person or a team or an organization can be range from I am engaging and I am the kind of person that if I'm in a room of people that are like me, I'm going to go leave that room and go find another table to be around, because I like being around all this other different ideas, and it's not a big deal to me. To the other side of the spectrum, which is I'm in a hesitant space and I would prefer just to be around people who are like me, however I describe like me. And all of this information around inclusion and belonging, I don't get the business case. I don't see how it makes sense for us economically. I don't see how it makes us productive or more curious. I don't think and it's also a great way to get canceled. And so there's a spectrum in between there. And you're allowed to be in any one of those places relative to race or age or sexuality or gender or politics or religion. Now it gives us the opportunity to come in with a scalpel and say, James needs help when it comes to race, when it comes to working with people, race and maybe gender. But he's doing really well when it comes to sexuality and geography and age, right? So the challenge with the Myers-Briggs and a DISC assessment, while I think they are powerful, is that you can be trying to square peg, round hole something, as opposed to coming in with a scalpel and somebody give you the treatment or the medicine that you need in particular. 1, 2. You're number 1, sir.
I think I'm not enough. James, I think in particular, corporate cultural norms are shaped by or have been shaped by the baby boomer generation, rightfully so. They've been the largest working generation, but also significantly more homogenous in terms of a lot of things, specifically race. We're here talking about younger generations, but as a fellow Gen Xer, other than you mentioning that, like, we don't talk about Gen Xers in the workplace. But if I think about my own career in the credit union space, grew up in an analog world, right? So when we say hang up the phone, I remember hanging up the phone, like actually hanging up the phone, not just pushing a button, right? But now, I'm curious, like, as a fellow Gen Xer, what role do you think Gen Xers play in a multi-generational workplace?
Yeah, I think they need to come out of the shadows because while baby boomers are larger, millennials are larger, and Gen Z is larger than Gen X, it's the Gen X folks that are running organizations right now. They have the largest amounts of money in savings because they're not spending, because they're not retiring yet, and they've gone through a couple ups and downs through economic downturn. So they've made money and they're holding a lot of cash, and they are in the top position. Maybe not the top position, but that top third, that top 20% is populated by Gen Xers that are sometimes too quiet when it comes to these things, and so they need to, in their own ways, find their way to find their voice and then use it. And I would put much pressure on the men folk, right? Those people that happen to identify as men tend to be a bit more quiet when it comes to these things, when their voice is needed right now the most, right? And as I've said at the beginning, you need all the best players on the field if you want to make a difference. And you didn't make it to that level not being one of the best players. So we need your opinions about this too, right? That's what I would say.
Cool. Thank you.
We had one more, and then I think where our time is about up.
I have so many questions, but I'll start with
one.
I know, just one. Yeah, this is already so great. The data, because credit unions in general are now trying to be really data-driven organizations, and so I'm curious if you could actually make some plugs for some vendors who are doing the measurements for belonging and inclusion.
Yeah, I can make one. And I say that not sarcastically. It is, about 3 years ago, I told the team we should be providing for our clients tomorrow's solutions right now. That's what they pay us for. And so why are we talking about diversity when everybody's already doing that? Find the new idea. And so I locked a bunch of smart people in a room and said, don't come out until you have a better idea, right? And the better idea is to look around the corner. Like, I'll give you one for free-ish. Stop using DEI. And stop using diversity as words or phrases to use, because they've been dunked in negativity and they will derail the conversation that you're trying to have. I kind of feel like a bit of a sellout saying it, but I think that I'm right. I'm happy for somebody to poke me in the eye and say I'm wrong. But the phrase DEI, which has kind of become a word, and the word diversity in today's political environment, you start to utilize it out loud and you can get derailed off of the topic that you were trying to talk about. If it's about making a difference, why do the words matter? So that's a concept that is a tomorrow's concept, because there will be language after, right? Before diversity, there was multicultural, and before multicultural, there was civil rights, and before that, there was something else. So there will be a next. So why can't we invent the next right now and just run with it and stay way ahead of everybody else? So that's what I would say. Okay, I quit. Thank y'all.